All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are exploring one of the most fascinating biological hacks in all of agriculture. Seriously, it's a way to essentially vaccinate your plants, making them stronger, more aromatic, and way more resilient. I mean, think about it for a second. We're always taught that growing is all about nurture, right? The right food, the right care. But what if we've been missing a huge piece of the puzzle? What if the real secret is actually about scaring the plant just a little bit? What if a simulated threat is exactly what it needs to unlock its absolute full potential?
And that's the whole idea behind what's called a false flag operation. The key here, we're not actually hurting the plant at all. Nope. We're just using a really clever bit of biological trickery to convince it that it's under attack. And that, in turn, forces it to arm itself to the teeth.
Okay, so how in the world does a trick like this even work? Well, to get it, you've got to understand how a plant sees its world, and more importantly, how it identifies its enemies. It all boils down to spotting a very specific fingerprint.
You see, plants have this incredibly sophisticated surveillance system. They're not just passively sitting there waiting for things to happen. Their cell membranes are literally covered in these receptors that act like tiny little guards, and they are constantly tasting the air and water around them for the chemical signatures of their enemies.
And the biggest, most common threat signature they're always scanning for is a molecule called chitin. Just think of it as the universal bad guy fingerprint. If a plant detects chitin, it's almost a dead giveaway that it's being attacked by either a fungus or an insect, its most common enemies.
And that's exactly why chitin is such a reliable alarm bell. On one side, you've got pathogenic fungi, like powdery mildew, and their cell walls are made of it. On the other side, you have pests like beetles and mites, whose tough exoskeletons are also made of it. So for the plant, seeing chitin means one thing and one thing only. It is go time.
So here's where we get clever. The whole false flag operation is actually pretty simple. We apply a spray that's full of chitin, think fermented crab shells or insect frass. The plant's receptors taste these little chitin fragments, and because they can't tell the difference between this harmless spray and a real live attacker, it triggers the immune alarm.
All right, so the plant has been successfully tricked. The alarm is sounding. But what happens next? What actually goes on inside the plant? This is where its internal communication system just kicks into overdrive.
Yeah, see, the plant detects that broken down chitin, and it doesn't just see it as a minor issue. It interprets this as a major breach of its perimeter. We're talking a full-blown code red alarm that goes off throughout the entire organism.
This whole response has a name. It's called Systemic Acquired Resistance, or SAR for short. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a vaccine for the plant. We're giving it a safe, harmless piece of the enemy, and that triggers it to build up all of its defenses. So if and when a real threat shows up, it's already on high alert and ready to fight.
So how does that warning signal actually get around the plant? Well, it uses hormones. The plant releases these two key signaling molecules, salicylic acid and jasmonic acid, and pumps them into its vascular system, which is kind of like its bloodstream. These hormones then race to every single part of the plant, from the leaves to the roots, carrying one urgent message: get ready for a fight.
Okay, so the warning has gone out. The entire plant is officially on high alert. And now comes the really amazing part: the physical and chemical transformation. The plant literally starts to turn itself into a fortress.
In response to that code red alarm, the plant kicks off 3 primary defense mechanisms, 3 big moves.
First up is physical armoring. The plant's cell walls start to thicken with something called lignin, making them way harder for pests to chew through. Second, it launches an enzymatic counterattack. Get this, the plant starts producing its own enzymes to dissolve the chitin in the attacker's body. It's basically fighting fire with fire. And third, it unleashes chemical warfare, flooding its system with toxic secondary metabolites to poison any invaders.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. That's all really cool for the plant's survival, but what's in it for me, the grower? Well, remember that third part, the chemical warfare? That's where the magic happens for us.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. Those chemical weapons the plant produces, the plant's secondary metabolites, or PSMs, they are the exact same compounds responsible for the aroma, the flavor, and the potency of the crop, things like terpenes and essential oils. The plant's weapon is our reward.
And the results are, they're just dramatic. You can see it right here. Before this whole process, the plant's just at its normal baseline. But after we trigger this response, the cell walls are thicker, the pest resistance goes through the roof, and most importantly, the levels of those valuable terpenes and resins are massively upregulated. It is a total transformation.
So, let's just wrap this up. What's the payoff for the grower? By tricking the plant into thinking it's under attack, you get a crop with way more resin production, a much more intense and complex aroma, built-in resistance to actual pests, and just incredible flavor. You're essentially pushing the plant to achieve its absolute peak performance. And that really leaves us with a pretty cool thought, doesn't it? This whole process, it's really a form of communication. We're using the plant's own chemical language to send it a message. And it just makes you wonder, if we're only just now learning how to tell a plant to defend itself, what else could we ask it to do?